Oh, yes. Welcome indeed, everyone, to another Mere Mortals Meandering session. You've got your two favorite Mere Mortals here, but we're not out in the park. Once again, Kyrin coming through clutch and screwing over Juan. That's
Here comes clutches twice in a month.
twice in a month, twice in like a week and a bit. So can he go for three? Find out in the next episode.
The next installment.
Of the Mere Mortals. So once again, we're doing this remotely recorded. So going back 2 for 2. You've got Kyrin here on this side of the microphone.
You've got one on the other side, and if you're watching the video as well, I've got some Husk Distilleries Bam Bam Australian spiced rum that I'm crushing down. This is for my 30th birthday, by the way.
Oh, beautiful. And then because Juan is doing that, I've also got, nice little crack there. I've got a Copperberg cider here. We're becoming those podcasters.
The ones that they drink while they're doing the podcast, and go like 2 or 3 or 4 deep.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that'll be the standard, but it's a celebration. It's somewhat of an end of an era, to be honest. And once again, I was really pissed off at myself for forgetting the cameras today, because it was probably going to be one of the last ones that we do outside in a while. This is, I suppose, another, a new beginning. Let's just put it that way. So we're not ending off with a total disaster. A Meanderings episode, for everyone wondering, is kind of a free-for-all. It's going to be a little bit more free-for-all, I think, even this one, now that there's some drinks out as well. But I did want to start with just some housekeeping, I think, because with the end of an era, it's probably worth knowing, okay, what's going to change, what'll stay the same, what are we working on? So the biggest change, I think, is Riverside. So we talked about this slightly in the musings, but Riverside is a online, I guess you'd call it like streaming / recording service. So we've used a Zencaster a lot I have for the recording of conversations with other people. Now this is the ability, and it lets us record, hopefully get some transcripts as well, record remotely with higher quality video, higher quality audio as well. So I do think that there is going to be an improvement on both the video and audio quality. So we'll see with the live video if I can find a way of making that look nicer. But at the moment, it's basically, the plan is we'll do the live video, and then I'll just hide that stuff, and you'll just get the better quality things on the Friday or the Sunday as we normally do. So we'll see with that. We'll still try and have the weekly convos on the Wednesday. There's no guarantees with that. There will definitely be a live episode of some sort on the Wednesdays. Whether one is included is the other
yet to be seen.
Yes. We'll just see how we go with that. I've got a couple of things that I can ramble about, do solo casts anyway, so we'll just see with that. Once again, with the Sunday ones as well. I mean, these meanderings, unless we enjoy this and do it like this every now and then, or fortnightly as we were doing, we'll just see with that again. Once again, it's just how much time you have, and then I will try and fill it up as much as I can with conversations. But just judging from the last time when we were doing weekly conversations, that was hard.
Yeah, that is hard. Yeah. For those who might not appreciate it, right? It's the scheduling of individuals to go and have a conversation and the preparation beforehand. But it's huge. And like one point, right, there's a certain individual, Jason, who I've been trying to get on the podcast, just have a bit of a conversation. There wasn't that much prep that I would have really had to do really for it. But even just the prep, the scheduling, then the doing it, then the post editing, I went, man, obviously at the moment we've got a little girl on the way, still not here, but soon to be. I went, honestly, by the time I even try and do all this, she's going to come, and I probably won't have this for a while, so I might as well just leave it for a little bit later. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes behind getting together just an interview.
Yeah, it's funny because I was trying to compare, how much is it? How much is it actually, the reaching out, the scheduling and whatnot? And if you condensed it into just one big work session, I think it would be okay. But it's not, because they say this, then you have to get back 2 days later. And then, I was meant to be chatting with Sam Sethi 2 hours ago, but then he had this podcast thing on. So that got pushed back to tomorrow. And, it's just all these little bits and pieces, and then yeah, once again, if you're doing full on research, it's
Well, and it sometimes even is the case that the individuals worth talking to are out doing some pretty interesting stuff or busy on their own right just across the world. So, sometimes like for me, it has been just by luck that getting like Jeff and Nick Blair and Jeff Yu just on the podcast was just by sheer luck. And the second time with Nick was going and finding time in his calendar. Otherwise, it might have been a thing that you plan for Thursday and you have to move to Sunday and then you have to move to another week. And it's like, okay, no, that didn't work that well.
yeah, very much like how in the next year you're going to be very time poor, and so if someone was really wanting to reach out, if they'd done it a year prior, 2022, you
Mm.
probably would have been like, yes, please
Oh,
save me from the
easily.
boredom of COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A couple of years ago, it would have been completely different. So circumstantials, absolutely, and yeah, I think it's just to be appreciative of how difficult it is to do weekly interviews, and I can really see the Joe Rogans, the Tim Ferriss, anyone else who does Tom Bilyeu, they do massively long podcasts. Of course, I've got a big team, and that's supporting it. Well, Tim less so, but still, there's people
I think you
supporting it.
still
There's
need a
people
full
doing it.
time kind of person
Yeah,
just for the admin stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and I think it's important to see, looking into the podcast here, into the meta of it. It's Kyrin doing a lot of this editing. It's Kyrin doing all the editing. It's Kyrin following up the process of finding the interviews. It's a lot of work, and I think you called it out actually in the book review, in the live book review that you were doing just before for the summary. That fuck, there's a lot of effort that goes into this, and if we don't see the value or the need to do it, well, you're not going to do it. Like it's just kind of like, okay, well, why am I doing this? I think there's aspects to the interviews now that I can see for the next few months, year, 2 years for me, that if it's not just purely for myself being beneficial, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it or not. And so some of the people who I want to talk to, it's beneficial because, say, for instance, Jason, I wanted to talk to was around the fact of, hey, he's an older guy, 40 something, who actually tried to get, fit towards his late 30s, has a family, and is moving towards that path and has become really good. Now I'm like, okay, cool. There's some insights and learnings I think I personally want to know. If anybody else in the world wants to from the Mere Mortals, cool. Come and like listen in. But at least for me, it's going to be beneficial. And so I'm going to have to move towards that aspect.
yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
mean, for me, it's a tough one. There's several things going on in my mind. One is if for the podcast to grow and to reach a level where I can make it the full-time thing and
Mm.
therefore put all of my effort into it, and that means it becoming a full-time income, that you kind of need to reach out for people who it's not just for personal pleasure of you chatting with them. So
Mm.
this would be kind of some of the people I've had on the book. I've done book reviews on, such as David Chalmers from Reality Plus. He's an Aussie philosopher, or Peter Singer, another Aussie philosopher. Now I've reached out to both of them. Both of them were saying like, "Nah, sorry, I'm too busy." Now I can keep chasing them up, and I'm reasonably sure if I kept chasing them up over a year or two time period, I'd eventually get them on. The question is, you know, how much do I really want to? The burning desire is not the fire within me to do
Yep.
that, but it would still be a fun conversation for sure, and I think kind of beneficial for having the big names on that sort of deal. And
Well, and even more so, I was actually going to show you this, and I actually don't know if I've shown you or I talked to you about this. There's a guy called Al Bors, and again, Al Bors is not
I know who he is. Yeah, you've told me about
massively
him.
popular, right? And even getting him on the podcast is not going to be like a fantastically big thing. But I actually have messages tracking back, and I was showing my partner this. I've got messages back tracking to 2020, right? Back to 2020, and since then, it's me, and I'm showing here the phone with all these messages that I've sent through.
And he's just harding it.
And dude's just hiding in and replying and whatnot. And he actually replied once upon a time, being like, "Yeah, cool, I'll come on the podcast." Back in 2020, dude. I
Yeah.
went, man, I've still been trying, just like, come on, come on, come on. So, even there, I'm making the effort over extended years, and it's still not working out. So, there is some places that, how much effort is it really even worth doing that? And that does take up space, time.
This is, I suppose, you were talking about the meta before. So the
Mm.
meta of this is with the book reviews. probably for the past 6 months, I've been starting to feel, okay, this is getting back more into the personal pleasure of doing this because I'm not receiving much feedback from people, and not wanting to do the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting results to change.
Mhm.
Now things have slightly changed. I can see that some of the podcast numbers are bigger, but Adam Curry says this all the time. I was listening just today, and Dave was talking about the OP3 stats, i.e. the number of downloads. And he goes, I don't care. Does it pay the bills? That's the only
Mhm.
metric that I measure. And once I think there's a lot of kind of wisdom in that, which am I having enough impact on people that they are contributing enough back to me? So it's not even just the money aspect. It's more, okay, is this having an impact? And downloads
Mhm.
is such a shitty metric to measure that. So with the book reviews, I go,
Well,
it's fun. It's fun. It helps me learn a lot of things. But honestly, the stuff that I'm reading nowadays, I don't particularly need to do a book review for it anymore because I'm already
mm,
starting to forget some stuff from the past of things I've done book reviews on. So it's kind of like, well, maybe I should just be reading for pleasure and not doing these extra additional steps as well.
mm. Yeah, I almost take it to the book reviews part. Definitely not the last two that I've done, which have been, baby related, Up the Duff and the
Dad's Guide to
Dad's Guide to
Pregnancy.
Pregnancy for Dummies, basically. But some of the other ones, like Life Thoughts, like the reason I want to redo Men's Search for Meaning, which I think you were the one who did the original book review back in
Oh
2020
yeah, that was
and
2019 on the GoPro.
2019. So I wanted to redo that one, but I kind of wanted to tackle them not so much as, hey, this is me doing the work or book review and putting it together for almost anybody else's, but more so like for myself. One thing I actually find myself doing way a couple of months ago actually is I re-listened to my own book review of James Travidi's like Leaders of the Sea. I can't remember what the title of it was, but it was one of like my first original book reviews. And listening to it reminded me of my takeaways of the book, and I went, "Oh yeah, that's what the book was about." And just like straight away, and I kind of went, I think I might shift the way that I do book reviews and maybe even some of the general conversations towards that. In the, hey, the value even in here is me. It's for me in terms of this might serve as almost my video capsule of being able to re-listen to some of these books that I've got. Yes, I've got my OneNote where I store all of the details and descriptions and whatnot, but generally that's attributed to creating the video for the book review. And so I'm probably gonna leverage that as opposed to going down the path of, hey, I'm going to be doing this book review very specifically for the synopsis or for 14-year-old out there trying to read it. Nah, it'll be more to me, and I feel like that might hit other people who are similar mere mortals who might want to listen to it the same way.
Yeah, yeah, and look, the thing is, you can say, well, Karen, if nothing's happening, it's because your product is crap, and to a certain extent, I think that's true. There's so many things that I could be doing to grow it. The
Mm,
easiest of these would be doing collabs with other booktubers or bookstagrammers or things like that, of reaching out to more and more authors and getting because the authors, when they are on the kind of shilling circuit for their book,
mm.
they're trying to get on everything, so
Oh, of course,
they're
yeah, yeah. Like
easy to
if
get
you
on
look
and
at like
whatnot.
the latest, Peter Thiel did Outlive, I believe it was, and he was
Yeah.
on Tim Ferriss'
uh,
podcast, he was on Joe's
who was
podcast, he was
the
on Andrew
actor?
Huberman's.
Matthew McConaughey. I remember
Yes,
Green
traffic
Lights. He
lights.
was on
Yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah.
He was on everything. So yeah, there is that aspect of changing it up, but once again, the reason we split the book reviews from the Mere Mortals and made it Mere Mortals book reviews was because it was solo. It was a unique enough format that it didn't really make sense to have it
Mhm.
in the conversational style feed that we've got here. So, if we're then starting to do conversation on that channel, it'd kind of be like, well, why don't I do it under the just Mere
Mhm.
Mortals again? So,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of decisions on that. I've already talked about the new splits and whatnot, but that's just a way of us contributing back to people doing some stuff in the environment. So
Mhm.
particularly Dave Jones and I'm going to have some more of the developers on for Podverse. Mitch, I might try and get Stephen Bell on if he wants to do that from CurioCaster. And the Value for Value podcast, once again, I was telling you, Juan, just before, that I've kind of stopped doing the German and the coding and a little bit of the stretching as well. And
damn, even the stretching.
Well, I've been doing that at the gym a little bit, so it hasn't been
he's
that
joined the
crazy.
gym. He's joined the gym now.
Yeah,
again.
Officially joined the gym. Yes.
Good Life. Find him at a local Good Life.
Yeah, and I'm gonna. My plan is actually to be going to about 5 different ones. I want to be trying to go to the Valley one, the one here in Morningside, probably Carina, probably Carindale, and then maybe West End as well. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I've kind of been doing that a little bit with that kind of at the end of the workout and whatnot. So coming into winter as well, I imagine I won't want to be stretching as much, so it's kind of natural. But all of this is somewhat in preparation for the Value for Value podcast coming back for season 3. Once again, it's just an extra. You know what? So this was a topic I was thinking I'd maybe save it for a time, but screw it, we'll bring it up here because I think this is about the end of the housekeeping. Do you ever find yourself kind of intentionally sabotaging yourself, or so when I say that, you know, the mere mortal, the reseñas in Spanglish. So that was the podcast that I did of the book reviews. I would get all of my notes here in this book like this. I'll try and go back to, so here we go, false alarm on one side and then falsa alarma on the other side. And so I would just literally copy that over, and then I would do a book review in Spanish. Now, it wasn't great, and I think it's one of those weird ones where I go, man, my Spanish is so shit. You can hear me umming and erring. You can see all the problems I've got, but it's kind of unique because it's a foreigner doing it. That got picked up and promoted by Apple Podcasts, and when I was deleting the feed for that the other day because Sounder, I needed to get it off Sounder or FM, which is where I was hosting it. Couldn't get it onto Castpod easily, and I just went, fuck it. Like, I've got all the stuff. I can just re-upload this whenever I want.
Sure.
I looked in the Apple Podcast, the back end of that for Apple for podcasters and whatnot. I had fucking 600 subscribers for that, man. And I wasn't even putting things out, you know. That was the thing that kicked off immediately, and then I just shut it down. The Value for Value podcast, in terms of the boosting amount per episode, so, you know, per minute of Satoshis coming in, that is by and far way better than the book reviews and this
everything combined. Yep.
But I don't want to dedicate my time just to that thing. It's kind of like I get success somewhere and then I just go, fuck it. Like, it's not fuck it, but it's not exactly what I want to do, and I don't want to get caught in a trap of doing things that I don't want to do. But then it's frustrating when I'm grinding away, you know, for the mere mortals or the book reviews or something, and it feels like nothing's happening, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's the problem though, right? Like, you can get yourself stuck into the false valley or the false mountain, and you miss the bigger valleys and the bigger mountains that are beyond with the longer term payout. In terms of, I think something like the Value for Value, sure, from a sats per minute, it probably is gathering the largest, if you want to call it from a payment to people valuing it, way, let's compare it to the book reviews, way greater, way greater, right? But in its viewership, hey, maybe it's slightly less, maybe it's equivalent if you look at it per minute or per subscribers. Again, unsure. Ultimately, though, I think you need to look at it from a, where do you ultimately want to be either known for, putting in the effort. And if it does feel like, I mean, if it did feel to you like the Value for Value or conversations or a consultancy mode like that kind of fits in well, you're like, oh yeah, cool, I could see myself doing that more. Well, sure, why not continue that? I mean, to your original point, do you ever feel like I somehow to like sabotage myself in that regard, or even that, like the specificity,
or like you give up success, like you've got something going on and it's going well, and then you you intentionally choose not to follow it? I suppose is more.
I don't know. I think one, I'll probably be humble enough to say that I don't think I've ever had like anything come through with life that has been like, oh wow, that's going to be like an
Kickoff or
outrageous
viral or
success.
something.
Nah, nothing like that. Like it's never been the case. So I probably don't have a like enough tangible things where I've gone, oh, I had this runaway like prize that I could have
Immediate
run with, but I
success type
didn't.
deal.
But I didn't. So there wasn't really that. But even in the things that you know could have been incredibly good, I still think even if they happened, or even if they sat in my brain as, oh, that should have been something I continued. When I'm sitting now, I'm like, oh, I don't really remember them, nor do I care about them. And I think that probably at least guides me in going, maybe I did. Maybe I did self sabotage in some ways where maybe for me it would be the older I get, the more I go, oh, I don't think I like competition that much in this weird way. Like I feel like I thrived on being competitive when I was younger. And it's not to say that I'm not, but I will shy away more from it now.
Hmm.
And it's more in the sense of there's no, well, feels like one, there's no rush. Two, I'm more okay to let something sort of flow. An example again, if this episode for some reason all of a sudden like blew up, I'm not tempted to have a conversation and talk about, hey, maybe we talked on this specific topic, or this seemed to be blow up. We do a specific little cut from it, or something like that. Not really. I don't think I would. Maybe in the self sabotage frame, the only thing would be, if I then decide to like go jump full into that perspective, or that's what's being successful, I'll then want to compare it to other things, and then the competitive or the comparing, and then being able to really see whether it was really that good or not, maybe holds me back from doing it at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, self sabotage probably isn't the best way of putting it because it's more a question: am I self sabotaging myself? I don't think that's the case, uh,
Mm,
but you can certainly look at plenty of things I've done in my life. I was chatting with this random guy at the park today who was kind of he's had some problems, been on workers' comp, and just got onto the topic of like salaries and saving and stuff. And I was telling him like, man, I skipped out on 6.5 years of basically guaranteed work in the mining
mm,
industry. I would have earned more than 1 million, and I probably would
mm.
have saved, uh, you know, seventy
A
percent of that,
huge, yeah, a huge portion of that.
and then invested that and probably I've
Lost it
done
all.
okay from that.
Lost it all
Yeah,
in Cardano and Husky.
shit. But the thing is like I'd probably be a millionaire now if I had done that,
Mm.
but I'd also be absolutely miserable. And so I'm pretty sure that I made the right choice, but it is getting caught up in that short term versus long term versus viral versus doing what is sustainable.
Yeah,
Uh,
well,
it's it's a hard it's
here's
a hard
sometimes the
balance.
question, right?
Yeah.
Here's sometimes the question, and I think everyone should ask themselves this because I feel like I've asked myself this sometimes because a lot of the times the thoughts or the actions of what you should do, is it coming from you, like truly you, as like that's what you think from a perspective, or is it being driven by some external factor, some external influence, someone actually talking to this point? So, to that effect, when you say valley for valley, should I have gone harder there? Should I have not left resenyas and actually continued that? It is sometimes clear, and I don't think at this point it's someone externally has been telling you like, oh no, you should have kept it going. But in some way or form, I guess the statistics that try to tell you, like, say that, right? The stats have said, hey, there's subscribers going onto it, or valley for valley, sats per minute is probably the best one. But ultimately, I think if the decision is made and the change is driven by internally as a individual, this is what I want to do it for this particular reason. And then if you're self sabotaging in some way, okay, well, then that's a problem. But if you make those decisions to not keep the resenyas, uh, valley for valley, you are going to do it again anyways, right? Season 3. But if it's internally driven, no matter what the external says, like whether from a viewership perspective, it's 2 people or 100 people or low value or high value, but you within you go, yep, there's enough feasibility as to why I should do this internally for my own internal reasons. Yeah, then the only thing self-sabotaging beyond that would be, okay, then something intrinsically to you trying to stop that. I'll just go, yeah, as long as it's internally driven, it's a much better cause for action than letting you letting your behavior change by anything externally telling you to do it.
Yeah. Well, probably a portion of this is just driven by looking for a partner and actively going out and searching at the moment, and that it can feel like a grind, and it can feel like nothing's happening. I haven't met the Mrs. Right, that sort of thing. And I think that then affects other aspects of my life, and then starts making me think more short term rather than long term, which is
Mm.
detrimental in many ways. Some ways it's better to be thinking short term, but
Well,
yeah.
well, I was going to even put it to you. Still, when you think about the podcast right now, do you think, as you said, because you're looking at finding a partner, there's the view for you is it's starting to format into a bit of a shorter term thinking in terms of, okay, the next 3 months got to look like this, or this is what I want to achieve by 3 months, or this is what I need a podcast to be doing by 3 months. And the reason I ask this is because kind of at the same time, now that I'm expecting like little baby girl, dude, I was actually talking about it with my partner a couple of days ago. I was like, oh, I can't wait when she's like 14
Yeah,
and
you
having a
miss out
conversation.
on all those years. Yeah.
No, well, I was like, oh, I can't wait till she's like 14 and having a podcast conversation with her, like being able to have a podcast conversation on here, or for her to listen or to give her opinion and things like that. So my view is like extending really long. Like it's just getting like super long in the same time. Okay, cool. I'm setting it up so that I can do this for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, right? So my view is starting to go real long term.
Hmm. Yeah, well, yep. Like I said, mine's I think being driven short, and it's kind of being driven short by, I suppose, it's that aspect of like facing up to reality. Just because you want things to be certain ways
Mm,
doesn't necessarily mean they will. Just read Animal Farm. All those communists wanted the paradise, the gains of living in a more communal type social setup. It didn't work out so well for them, and at what point did they have to give up their beliefs and face up to reality? Like, oh, Joseph Stalin is even worse than the SARS.
mm,
Not and now equating that back to podcasting and and being like, okay, Kyrin, you know, uh, you will want to buy a house and have kids at some point. That requires money. Where are you going to get that money come from? You've got some savings now, but you can't kind of like live off of them forever. So what are you going to do? And I can imagine two worlds. I can imagine the world where the podcast has got that 1,000 true fans who support it, and
mm.
they support it enough where it's enough for both myself and you, or maybe we split it. I don't know how that would work. We haven't even talked about that, but I could imagine a world where that exists, and everything, like it's kind of like a 9 to 5, but it's doing the podcast and I love it because it's podcasting's fun as hell. That's why we've done
Mm.
it for 3.5 years and whatnot. And then I can also imagine the world where I go back into the mining industry or some sort of other type of profession, and the podcast is truly just the hobby on the side, and maybe it does earn a little bit of income or something, but it is an important part, but not the main part.
Mm.
I can see both of those worlds, and so it's kind of like, all right, well, which would I prefer at the moment? Certainly the all in on the podcast for sure, but uh, how how much work would I have to do to get that? I think it's doable. I definitely believe it's
Mm.
doable, but then it's how much work and how much, I guess, soul, if it requires me to sell my soul in it, or do
Do
have
things you
conversation.
don't want to do.
Yes.
Mm.
How much different is that than doing the things I didn't want to do in the mining industry?
Yeah,
So
well, let me expand
trying
on
to
here.
find that
So
balance.
let me expand on here as people are listening in, right? So let's meander over, like, just in general, the conundrum of these sort of things in life, where you don't really know what to do. It's a little bit of the
Hmm.
unknown plane in front of us, and like, yeah, do you just go deep dive and maybe it to work, maybe it doesn't. A similar sort of trajectory for me is, again, an example. We were talking with my partner about, in a couple of months' time, how does training look like? Because she wants to get back to training. I want to continue my own training. As a bit of an idea, at the moment, my training has not gone down. It's actually like started to track upwards. I was this morning's 1 hour and 42-minute workout. Um, and so for me, I'm like, okay, I know that I'm going to have to become more flexible, right? That's a absolute given with the way that I'm currently training. But for me, the conundrum is moving between being optimal and being flexible and trying to accommodate obviously what's going to be happening in terms of being a dad. And I make no mistakes about it. Like, I know for sure it's going to change the way that I live. Absolutely. But in front of me, I go, okay, do I, and this sounds dumb. I know for sure as I say it, but I'm like, oh, even when she comes, do I start like doubling down on every spare time to become fitter? Do I double down on making every time, trying to maximize the money that I'm making for the family? Or is it maximizing the time with the family? So there's a lot of these things which I think in part I kind of made decisions as we're going through. But it's a conundrum because I kind of look forward and go, is that going to be the wrong investment of time? Right. And I think this is a similar thing that you're facing, which you can go, well, you can put absolute all of your effort or double down, triple down, whatever into the podcast world side of things. But is it a case that, eventually maybe you go, okay, I'm going to go back into the workforce and actually do this for when this time comes without knowing whether there's going to be a payoff, right? There could be for me a thing that I go absolutely deep into making the most time with the family, but then daughter hates me because I don't know, whatever happens. I was like, oh shit, did I just not do the right thing? Should I be invested elsewhere? So yeah, it's a conundrum. I'm not too sure whether we as sort of mere mortals, whether it helps that much look so far into the future, or if it's just, yeah, okay, these are the 2, 3, 4 different trajectories. What does it look like? Just the next step forward.
Hmm. I was listening to Sam Harris on Lex's podcast, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
a bit of an older episode, I think a month or two old. And when it got into Sam talking about the point of kind of meditation, of free will, of this kind of living in the present, of why worrying, both feeling guilt over the past and then worrying about the future, why both of those are kind of silly in a way, and they're natural reactions. So he's not, saying if you have them you're silly, but it's kind of, if you examine them deeply, you go, oh, okay, there's no point. There's no point in worrying about the past or worrying about the future. It simply is that's what happened. And I was kind of going into that again. I was like, you know what? This is why I used to meditate, because it
Mm.
kind of put me more in that frame of mind, and it was very useful. And I'm sure I'll get back into it again someday. But yeah, at the moment, it's kind of like, no, I think I need to grind for a little bit. And once again, this all in aspect, I was thinking, how much hours do I put into the podcast per week? It's probably about 20ish. It's not a full time job. It's not even close
Mm.
to a full time job yet. A lot of people, when they do a self business or something like that, they put in 60, 80 all
Mm.
their time into it per week. And so I'm not even close to that. Now, I think the once again, long term strategy is to not burn out, is to not try and get it so quick, because when you get it
Mm.
so quick, you tend to go down the advertising route, because that's where the money is at the moment. Or you go down into the clickbaity, viral, short clip type stuff, which once again, it's doable, but then you it's doable for a short period.
Mm.
I was actually, so I have been creating clips a lot, and this is one of the things I've kind of acknowledged I was wrong on, which was, we do the fucking long form. People should just find it and enjoy it. That's how it should be done.
Mm.
Uh, I can acknowledge, you know what? No, that was a silly mentality. People don't have time to spend the hour or two it takes to get to know us. Here's a small clip of to kind of be dragged in.
Mm.
And when I was doing all these clips, it did show me one thing, which is how much non-critical communication there is. Man, so we when I do chapters, the conversations tend to, or the topics tend to be about 4 minutes to 5 minute intervals.
Mhm.
That's just generally when we switch from one thing to another. It can still be on the same broad topic, but the conversation will move into another like a step
Mm.
change or something, a unique flavor of it. And of those 4 or 5 minutes, there's probably about one or two clips that I can create that'll encapsulate that whole 4 minutes or 5 minutes of talking.
And these
And
1 or 2 clips are like 60 seconds.
less than that,
Mm.
20 to 40 seconds, the vast bulk,
Yep.
majority of them. So there is so much non-critical communication, but I think that's, if you were to look at life like that, that'd be the wrong way of looking at it.
Mm.
If we could just get all communication down to this, shorten it and whatnot, it takes out some of the joyous things of it, which is a nice turn of phrase, a long build up. I'm going to tell you and a bunch of our friends of this stupid ass story that I participated in last Sunday, and so I'm hoping to do this coming Friday,
Mm.
and the story itself is probably going to take me a good 15 minutes to tell.
Mm.
I could cut that down to 1 minute of the details of it, but it's
Mm.
not going to be as funny because I need to draw it out, all of
Of
these
course.
small
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
things. Yeah,
Yeah. It actually, and you hit on a point. I think you're totally right in saying that the world is becoming more and more of the punchline. Give me the punchline. Give me the details. Give me the hard hitting things. Give me just the information out of this, the summary. Most
Chat
people
GPT. What are the 7 most important points from this? Yeah,
exactly, yeah, yeah.
summarize
Like
this
that.
for me.
All I see on Twitter now and a few different videos is summarize this book for me, summarize this video for me, summarize this YouTube video about learning how to fix a computer, but give it to me in dot points, right?
Yeah,
There's all of this. Yeah, just give me as quick as possible. I want this dopamine hit. I want this information 10 seconds, not 10 minutes.
reminds me of the life hacking sort of phase that there was a
Yeah.
while ago.
Yeah, for sure. And in part I go, yes, this is valuable to the actionability of life in getting on with it and being effective. But at least to me, I get some enjoyment, man, of listening to a long form podcast. I get enjoyment out of reading a well constructed story. I get a ton load of enjoyment and all of these value to well articulated, funny comedians, like someone like a Dave Chappelle. If you were to just clip Dave Chappelle, it's funny. If you listen to the whole thing and then you understand
The builder.
the
Yeah.
smartness, the build up, the ideas, the pulling back the joke from 4 times throughout the whole skit, even better, right? It doubles it in terms of value. I think it's a similar thing. At the very least, the way that we articulate and put together reels or clips and whatnot, cool. It should be highlights, but it shouldn't be. It isn't the overall value that you might be getting from a whole podcast, a whole book, a whole whatever. That's why for me, I think it's called Blink List or something like that, where they summarize a book into 7 minutes or something like that, and it's like, oh, Blink List, just go and listen to this for 7 minutes. You'll get what the whole book is about. That's all you need. And I go, man, I don't know. I don't know if this is absolutely the fairest way, because even just the way that a whole, like, let's take Man Search for Meaning. If you read a summary of Man Search for Meaning, even listen to a Man Search for Meaning 5 minute, you know, summary, and you go, cool, I get the gist of it. Like, yes, you'll get the gist of it, absolutely. But the value is in the overall read and understanding the time period, how they're interacting, how Viktor Frankl is, describing certain things, the underlying facts that might not become obvious. And at least for me, dude, I've read it now 3, 4 times, probably coming up to 5 times this year. Every time I'm picking up something new. There is no way any of that is being uncovered in reading it or listening to a 5 minute summary. No way. You're not picking that up at all. So I think there's some beauty behind that, and I go, yep, I can see that there is a necessity to operate in the world in the give me the punchline, and we've been doing that. That's fine, but I think I will always stick by the value or the shining star in it all is the more long format. It is the storytelling. It is the build up. It is what what makes you go like, oh wow, that was worth sticking around and listening to. Which, for me, there's individuals like, actually, here's an example, Jimmy Carr. So I'm gonna go, hopefully, fingers crossed. Gonna go check him out on Monday night. He's playing here in Brisbane.
Oh, nice, nice.
And I love him. He's an awesome comedian.
Is
But if
that
you
is
know
that
him,
like a Brisbane festival or something coming on? Is
I
that,
don't know if
or is
it's
it
the
just a
Brisbane Comedy
standalone?
Festival or just him coming up. But we booked this 9 months ago, and his delivery of comedy is like little punchlines, right? Bang, 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 and they're all good. Like, you listen to each one, fine, you'll have a good laugh. But overall, in the whole picture, as he constructs the entire night of the skit and whatnot, makes it even better. So, overall, I go, yeah, man, there's just so much value. There's just so much value still to be had. And I think humans, mere mortals in general, will do better to become better storytellers, better long form articulators than punchy, one offs.
Hmm. Where are some areas in your life where you are doing the punchy one-offs, where you think it is useful for you to go summarize this for me, or I don't need to know this. This is just give me what I want to know.
Well, I think it's the where you have to take action. We have to take some sort of action. Let's just say random actions like, hey, I need to fix my mower. I need to replace my pipe in the sink. Hey, I need to whatever do some sort of manual labor or labor that gets me to the next thing. That summarize it, make it as effective as possible. Like, I don't know how much more effective you're going to get from. Like, I do this all the time. I'll Google or find a YouTube video of, hey, I need to change the batteries on this thing, or I need to go and fix that. Cool. I'll watch it. I'll go do it. Cooking recipes. Maybe if they're summarized in a better way. Sure, that's where I see it to be important. Where I don't see it as important or as efficient is where you have to convert the information that you're coming in, that you're absorbing, into knowledge, into wisdom, into, hey, what does this mean? There's a very, very clear difference between getting a summary of what Bitcoin is and putting in 1,000 hours into what's the background, what's the financial sector's history, why it's reasonable to think that it might become this next best thing, et cetera, et cetera. They're so different. It's unbelievable, because with one, you can give the highlight of what Bitcoin might be to a person, and there's not much more to go with it. But if you were to, like, I would hazard a bet that if you were to go down the path of learning about finances, why Bitcoin seems to be important, why people find it to be a better means than the existing financial system, and you spent a year learning into it, like, I don't see too many people coming out of it and going, it was the same as a punchline. You would just have such a deeper understanding. So I think the shifting of information to wisdom and knowledge, nah, that's not where I use it. But for actionable stuff, sure, why not?
Hmm. I'm trying to think for me because I wouldn't say it's actionable per se. That I think it's more I go it's just got to be things I kind of inherently enjoy, and it's funnily enough it's I'm not actually sure what I inherently enjoy. So the coding, for example. So I said this year I
Mm.
wanted to learn a coding language, or at least try and get the basics of one down. And done a couple of book reviews, coding for beginners. There was a couple other Python ones, and I can just say from those that it hasn't stuck. I haven't I haven't prioritized it because of reading those, and it's basically fallen off the wagon, and I'm not sure I'm even going to bother getting back to it because when I was trying to do something with ChatGPT, sure, it was painful and annoying to do stuff with it, but it
Mm.
was actually writing the code, physically
Yep.
writing the shit out. Well, not physically, digitally writing the shit out for me, so I didn't have to physically do it. And I don't think I physically enjoy just typing on my keyboard. I don't
Well,
find
and
that
well,
inherently.
here's the other question: are you going to be any better than ChatGPT doing it for you from a language to Python than you doing Python as human to
No,
Python?
I don't believe so because I lack the creativity. And I was telling
Mm.
you, I was saying this in the book review. I was trying to come up with a way to do like a really simple thing related to the Fibonacci sequence. There's 15 different ways you could go about doing that in Python. I know that this is possible. And I just didn't, I lack the ability to come up with that, of putting
Mm,
those things together. Now you compare that to something like learning Spanish or learning German. It's not that different. You have to do a lot of the same things. You have to learn about the underlying structure, either grammar or
mm,
the syntax of the language. You have to put in the straight up hours of rote memorization. Curly brackets does this thing. These words all end in the feminine vowel, so therefore they're feminine, or they end in an A. Okay, it's going to be la casa. And there's so many similarities, but I think it comes down to, ultimately, when I was at the gym the other day, there was a Portuguese chick there who was learning Spanish. And so I had a chat in Spanish with her, with a good looking
mm,
chick. That is much, much more fun than typing on my keyboard and trying to figure out, why the fuck is this code not working? Like,
mm,
I just want to download this thing from the RSS feed. Like, why can't it just get this JSON file? And I think that's why I'm probably going to tend towards things like that. It's just for the simple, boring reason that I just don't like doing some certain things for whatever reason. And so
mm,
for ChatGPT, if it can help me write code quicker because I don't have to physically do it, I'm going to do that. To fix my car, yes, I don't enjoy tinkering around
mm,
in the mechanics, so I'm going to look up the YouTube video. But for something like having a conversation or learning about these silly, intricate details of a book and why the author used this word and how this word tetrico is different from lujubroso and the differences between those two, I kind of get into that, and
mm.
I enjoy that. So yeah, it feels like such a weaselly way out, and like, why are you hacking these things and not hacking these things? Well, just because I don't like these things, but that's the best explanation I can come up with so far.
Yeah, and I mean, and then just broadly in terms of us putting out things into the ether, you know, we've seen that a lot of our clips and reels in general have been getting more attention than a lot of the core content that we're creating, anyways, right? And I don't think that this is going to be too dissimilar across the board, like across everyone else's content. I can assume, you see the big clips of David Goggins or Tom Bilyeu or whoever else making all these content, and they got 3 million, 4 million, 5 million views. It's also where the audience is, right? In the current time format, you're not going to find the general broad population is going to have hours and hours and hours to spare to listen to all these podcasts, right? They're not. Same thing with books, same things, whatever. So there's reasonability as to why to have the greatest hits or the little clips or the summaries. They've got a time and place. I just still think that be careful in fooling oneself that consuming clips and consuming summaries is the same as going through the entire content itself. It is two different things. And I think the other one I would say is that is plays a key factor is how long you also want to keep that information or the wisdom or the knowledge, or you want to articulate what you're sharing through for a longer format. So, hell, I watch a hell of a lot of TikTok and reels and videos and summaries, and I'm sure for fixing a glass to doing something in the car. But ask many people, ask any mere mortal, ask them the same question like, hey, you seem to have fixed this 5 years ago. How was it? I would struggle to remember a lot of things. And again, that's why I kind of go, I think a lot of these things are in the moment, in the time, in the next few weeks, months, whether it's motivational, learning, actionable, whatever. But broadly, you know, there's like a handful of long format podcasts or books that I've read ages ago, and I can still at least come away with some of the core foundational knowledge, and I wouldn't have kept it if I just checked out the reels or the summaries.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I was actually thinking about this recently, about the clips and whatnot. I, I've talked in the past about how I've had a long time away from social media. The last 3 or 4 years, I've kind of needed to use it, and I've been using it mostly for podcast related stuff. Everything is under the Mere Mortals podcast brand, apart from my Twitter profile, and even that one if I could have fit at Mere Mortals podcast
You would
in
have
my
done it.
thing, I would have done that. um, but I've been noticing recently that yeah, I've kind of been watching some clips and whatnot, and I think that's fine. I don't. There seems to be a lot of moral hype about our attention spans are getting shorter and whatnot. I don't think that's actually true. I think that we're trying to find ways to fit in humor and things into those mini gaps that we have throughout the day of sitting on the toilet, of waiting for your partner to fucking find her phone or keys that she left upstairs, of whatever. And so you have all of these little mini moments throughout the
Mm,
day where you're just waiting for something to happen. And, filling that up, I think is a good thing. What I'm noticing though is like it's now tending to creep into moments where it's not just me filling up some space in
mm,
between sets of a workout or of whatever it is, and I'm going, oh, okay, this is actually consuming time which could be spent on those longer form things. And I think that's where it gets insidious, and that's where it gets bad for your kind of mental health and whatnot. So I'm
yeah,
kind of being
yeah,
like,
no,
all
for
right,
sure.
I think I might need to get a handle on this, and whether that be just deleting Instagram from my phone for a while or something like that. I think that might be the way to go.
Well, where in your current timeline of a day, if you found yourself watching, the infinite doom scrolling, or whatever it may be, they're just almost wasting time theoretically in a day, where in your day-to-day timeline, if that was to go in, would it make you call out like, oh shit, okay, we got a problem, we need to fix this?
It's typically when I know it's going to be bad for me. So right before going to bed,
Mm,
if I'm looking at a screen right before it's meant to be sleep time, that's a big no no for me. I really want to be trying to. I listen to podcasts in the evening whilst cooking and whatnot, but I tend to try and just have the screen not on
mm,
whilst doing that, or at the very least prioritizing ones which are audio only rather than video. Leading up to those moments just before going to bed or just before starting to read before going to bed. So that's one time period there. So where it's known to be detrimental to you, and then the other
mm,
one would be, I suppose, during a period of the day where it is. I know my productivity is generally better, where my focus is generally better. So this would probably be any time from waking up until probably 3 or 4 p.m. After 3 or 4 p.m., I can't study. I can't. I can, but it's just
yeah,
70%
it's a
effective.
diminished
It's not.
return.
Yeah, yeah. And so if I find myself at 2 p.m. in the arvo, I'm going to go for a workout soon, and I'm you know just jump on Twitter and go through. Sure, there's
Mm.
some funny stuff in there, but I mean, do I need that laugh, or would it be better spent just doing something with the podcast? And there are always, if you've checked out any of our monthly goals from the last 3 years, you can see I've never always ticking off every single thing. There's always time. There is always time.
Mm.
Well, there is always another task that I say I want to do, but I don't do. So what's going on, Kyrin?
Yeah, look, and we're not getting into the point where we're saying like, yeah, we are, yeah, sanctimonious in the sense that we never do this. Of course, we do this, right? We are wasting time every single day, and I think it is anti me immortal to think that that's not the thing to do. If you're
Yeah,
from the
it's
moment you
weird.
wake
It's
up to
weird
the
when you
moment,
see people doing the life hacking to the
mm,
productivity hacking to the utmost degree. I think that's a kind of shitty life to
yeah,
to
I think
try and
it's
live.
shitty. Yeah, 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 I think for sure. I think that's shitty. Like, I don't want to live that life. And if there's people who want to live that life, fantastic. But
Yeah,
fuck that.
yeah,
I don't want to do
yeah.
that.
For me, it would
So
be a shitty life.
yeah, and so the only real place that if I was to see this sort of wasting of time, or whatever you want to call it, infiltrate into that time, would be like my gym time and most of my family time. If for some reason it went into that, that would be my alarm bells ringing. Hey, cut that out. Like, now you got to like do something alarmingly quickly to go and fix this up. Luckily enough, I think, like, honestly, it's probably been like 3, 4 times in my life that I've been at the gym or doing some sort of workout, and I've wasted a little bit of extra time on Instagram or on TikTok or something else. Besides that, it's been pretty good. So that's all right for 10 plus years of training. So it's not many. But if I saw it come up there or in family time, and I go, okay, here's a problem like that I've got to address. But as you say, waiting for your partner to come down with the keys from upstairs, chilling out, waiting if someone goes to the bathroom, whatever, it's fine. Like that, I don't think people should hate themselves on that. We live in a world where we have the ability to be entertained during dull periods of time, but you'd probably just be staring at a wall. Fine, you just either staring at the wall or staring at your screen. That's kind of cool, but it's in the times where you should be taking the action where monitor because if you let that go loose, uh yeah, who knows where you're gonna end up.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Any things you want to bring up? Any other topics you had?
Nah, that was, I mean, the only other thing I was gonna say, which it was interesting you were talking about it with the book review, live book review, was specificity. I wrote it down, and it's a hell of a potion for when you're doing things to be specific about things. And so those two books that I ended up reading and did the book reviews for, with Up to Duff and Guides to Being a Dad, they were good books and they were the right books because it's the specificity that I need at the time, right? Over the last few months. If I'd read them when I was 14, no, of
Yeah,
course,
of
it
course.
wouldn't have been as great. I think there's a good potion, there's a good rhythm to going after things when you're also in the same train of mind that's going to make them more interesting. This happened for me with crypto. This happened to me with fitness, and fitness has been probably the most like a long-standing one of them. But, again, would we have been interested in crypto in 2009, 10, 11?
Nah, no
Not
chance.
really, right? We were too young. We'd have no idea really what's going on. We wouldn't have been able to like encapsulate it with what the hell's going, like what they're presenting in front of it. We
We didn't
wouldn't.
even know what the GFC
Specificity wouldn't have
was.
mattered.
I knew of it, but I
Yeah,
didn't know what it meant, what it
nah,
did,
same,
how it
right?
hurt
We
people
didn't
or
know
didn't hurt
what it
people.
actually
Yeah.
meant in reality. It kind of takes until this realm of time where us two and probably other mere mortals and maybe some to come for something like crypto or Bitcoin or in general or any other topic. I just it made me reflect, going, yeah, it is powerful and something to take advantage of, to be the specificity of doing the things that might be of interest or might be appropriate at the time for almost like expedited learning, right? So if I was to set myself a challenge of, you know, swimming X amount of distance, that's probably the right time as well to be reading swimming books, to be watching video things, to be learning stuff, just because it all sort of conglomerates into the same topic and the wanting to do it. Where I know I've personally found myself in the past has been often. I remember last year when I was doing the monthly learning pieces and doing summaries and all those sort of things, but I try to make it this way, it ended up not being as specific to what I was doing that month. Not ultimately. So some were good. With the swimming, when I was doing the 1K, I believe it was, I was writing and reading about that and listening about that and trying to improve from that perspective. Awesome. Really worked. In others, like sounding board, it wasn't the case. I wasn't really doing it. There were some aspects of it. And so it was just inherently harder. So I think one of those aspects I pulled out is, yeah, there's power to the potion of specificity. Like, being specific with the things that probably either interest or the things that are immediately actionable almost attracts you to wanting to be doing them in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why I'm reading this book here. Charles Handy, The Second Curve. Sam Sethi
Mm,
recommended that as basically the book to read about
mm,
technology, about the future, about learning how to kind of predict or ride the waves of what's to come. And just as a general synopsis of this is basically it's talking about how whenever you've got a company, a technology, or whatever coming, it comes and then it goes. And so, like, profits, you can only grow so far until there's no more customers, and then you start to dip down. And he's saying, like, you basically want to, before the peak of this other curve comes, you want to start investing in something new so you can start catching the second wave, the second curve is what he calls it, going up. And
yeah,
so it's kind of an interesting concept to think, is I would say podcasting 2.0 is kind of like the second curve for us. We were slugging along at podcasting for a while, and then it was like, okay, well, what what are we going to do with this? How can we make this interesting, more fun, unique? Because it feels like we're grinding away and nothing's happening. You find podcasting 2.0 and it's like, holy shit, sure, I had to
Mhm.
invest a bunch of time into learning. That was the reason I downloaded Telegram and Mastodon,
Mm.
and started to, find out, okay, well, what's a Satoshi? What oh, Bitcoin, there's 100 million of them and they're in a Bitcoin. Can you break that apart? Like, how does that work? So
Mm.
I kind of feel like that's for us, and I'm definitely going to be riding that wave, because you'll be noticing there's a lot more of those sort of conversations coming out. But yeah, in terms of specificity, I should probably start doing that with maybe the podcast a bit more, because I listen to a fair few, but there's still probably a bit scattershot around, and same with the books that I'm reading. Maybe it is worth dialing that in a little bit more than I have been previously, and sampling from all over.
Mm. Yeah, definitely more testing to be done in that. I haven't done it enough, but I just in the short times that I've done it versus not done it, I go, hey, if I focused a whole month on listening, reading, learning, talking about a particular thing, it's going to be just expedited learning slash it's going to be this grouped amount of work in a short amount of time that I'm going to remember longer than listening to it intermediarily with other things I'm listening to, reading, talking about over an extended period of time. It's kind of it feels more optimal in that sense. So,
Yeah, for sure.
but any mere mortal out there can tell me if they've tried something like this or similar to see if there's some other anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, yeah. Or if it's better to, I mean, it always comes in waves, right? You focus on something for too long, and then you go, I need to broaden out, and then it's like, oh, the broad way is the best way, and then after being in the broad spectrum for a while, you're like, oh,
Then you got to change.
I'm not learning anything. So the paradox of life, and that is the paradox of the mere mortals. It is mere mortals meanderings here. Thank you everyone for tuning in to just after a buck, I believe is what they call it when you've been going for an hour. It's a buck. So
Oh, a buck. Okay.
yeah, there you go. So we've been going for hour and a bit now. What did you take from this podcast? What would you recommend that we do in terms of the clipping, in terms of the podcast itself? Are you enjoying this? And if you are enjoying it, how are you going to express that? So this is a value for value podcast. We do enjoy that you give some value back from what you've received. So many different ways of doing this. You can simply share it with a friend, someone who would maybe enjoy this and a particular topic. Even the clips, if you wanted to share them and send those along. You could tell us about topics we might enjoy, books that we might enjoy, other things like that. And then you can also send back some value directly in a monetary form. The best way to do this is by going to one of the new podcast apps out there, which do have things like chapters with links in them. In the future, we will be going live, I'm sure of it, but not at this very moment, of the pod roll, which you can also see if you go to podfans.fm and type in Mere Mortals or Mere Mortals book reviews. All of these different things, and they enhance the experience. I was using Spotify just before one, and I was like, it just doesn't have it. It doesn't have it. They're trying to do it with
Ah,
polls and things like that,
yeah.
but it's so
It's not the same. It's not. It
so
isn't the same.
monochrome. So monochrome in the bad sense, not monochrome in Jeff Hughes'
Mhm.
sense. So we would recommend going to I'll start shouting out Sam's new one. So podfans.fm. He's basically finding a way to onboard easier for you, so you can actually get some sats, so you can play around and send it through to us if you want to do that. If you're interested in that, please just hit me up. It's either the Instagram or the Discord or the Twitter or the email on our website. Facebook, don't do that because I might miss it. And yeah, anything you want to recommend them to do one? Anything?
Nah,
Last,
beyond that, I
last
mean, be
thoughts?
on the lookout. I think that there'll be a lot of updates and playing around with the website. It sounds like from hopefully Kyrin's side and some support from my side. So obviously, be in the lookout for that. But ultimately, we are wanting you to support us from a value perspective through the use of boostograms, through the use of sharing through Satoshis in commentary form or in a listening per minute form. That's the way that we want to operate. We don't do these things for absolutely free forever. So if you do want us to be sticking around and, be supporting a podcast that you listen to all the way to the end, we do definitely appreciate that. Sharing with a
Yep.
friend, etc.
And we read those out on the Wednesday live episodes that we do, with the audio being released on the Friday. So we do acknowledge you and thank you directly for your contribution coming in. And I would just recommend
Absolutely.
sending in something, because he's got his new wallet set up. This will be the Juan baby fund. So send in a message.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wishing Juan and his partner good luck with the baby. Wish him karma for the years of sleep that he's going to be missing out on. And
now, and we forgot to call this out at the beginning of the podcast, by the way, but yes, on this 22nd of April, baby has not come yet, but yes, we'll be with us shortly.
What's the official due date meant to be? It's
26.
26, so 4 days.
4
days. Woo!
No, it probably won't be 4 days, but it'll be somewhere there. It'll be somewhere in amongst plus or minus 7. But obviously not -7. So +7. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, geez. I hope not. Yeah.
Easy.
Your partner's just been having a pillow under her the whole time, just fooling you.
Hiding away the fact that the baby already came out. I haven't heard any of its noise. I've been at the gym doing an hour and 40 minutes of workouts.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Immortal Lads, we're going to leave it there. I hope you have enjoyed listening in to these very different, but what might be a little bit of a familiar online presence until we get back to being in person for these meanderings and musings conversations. Hope you've enjoyed wherever you are in the world, and you are well. Juan out.
Kyrin out. Bye.
Shoo.